Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Stephen Klippenstein is the father of Ken Klippenstein, the reporter for the Intercept, who recently penned that hit piece against David Grusch. Now, there's some new information that has come to my attention that I believe needs to be talked about, so I'm going to talk about it right now. Just yesterday on Twitter, a user named Daniel Del Vecchio pointed out that David Grusch actually mentioned the Department of Energy in an interview that he had with a Dutch magazine back in late June, before the hearing before the House Oversight Committee, before Ken Klippenstein was sent out, was sicced onto David Grusch. And this is the comment that David Grusch used in that Dutch interview. He said this. He said, "One of the most scandalous facets of withholding the technology is that we could have been generating clean energy for decades, but continue to deliberately pollute the earth with oil. Climate change tech is being withheld. This technology has the potential to have a hugely positive impact on the ecosystem. The Department of Energy, which is also part of the Secret Services, has some explaining to do because this is a crime against humanity and the earth. We use the tech for war and not for peace and nature. The people who withhold this one day have to apply for amnesty somewhere for crimes against humanity." So, he said that in late June. And then, of course, the rest is history. As we all know, according to Ken Klippenstein, the reporter for The Intercept, who was called upon by people he claims were in the intelligence community and the Department of Defense, to seek out records in the Loudoun County, Virginia Sheriff's Department by filing a Freedom of Information Act request to find out. They directed him to go there. Now, those records, according to Liberation Times, did not have any identifiable information in them. And as we know now, I've talked about this before, Stephen Klippenstein is the son, he's a chemist and researcher who works for the Argonne National Laboratory, which happens to be a part of the United States Department of Energy. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm just reporting news. I mean, I'll leave no comment. I'm not going to say anything. I just want to point out to everyone that Stephen Klippenstein is basically an employee with the Argonne National Laboratory, which happens to be a part of the United States Department of Energy. And about a month after David Grusch made these statements to this Dutch news outlet about the fact that the Department of Energy is involved in the cover-up and that they are guilty of crimes against humanity, next thing you know, Ken Klippenstein, the son of somebody who's part of the U.S. Department of Energy, is sicced onto records that do have no identifiable information in them about David Grusch. I just thought I'd point that out before just as an aside. You know, you could think about that and do with it as you will. But anyway, what I want to talk about mostly today here is I believe that one of the reasons for this continuing ridiculous cover-up is because I believe the militaries of the world, particularly the top militaries of the world, do not want to admit this. They don't want to admit it because it will make them appear impotent. That's what I think. I think it's a matter of impotence. Because by admitting this, that means that you seem weak then, because there's nothing they can do about these things. And this has been going on for decades. It's been reported on for decades. There's been all kinds of different stories and reports over many, many years where jet fighters engage with these UFOs and they lose. They end up losing in the end. And so why would any military in the world want to talk about this and admit that this is beyond their pay grade? That's part of this. Now, meanwhile, that's why they're keeping this secret with this reverse engineering stuff, because they hope that they could come up with some technology out of this that they could say, and then they could come forward and say, yeah, this is what we've been doing for all these decades. We've been reverse engineering this stuff, and now we finally come up with something that now we could stave off these beings if they ever try to do anything to us. That could possibly be what it is. They're afraid of looking impotent because they feel impotent on the inside. I mean, the leaders of the biggest militaries across this globe feel impotent, and that's what this is about. And it's a matter of impotence. They fear how people will view them, which is really a wrong thing to do, actually. But if you look at the top militaries of the world, the number 3 is, according to Business Insider, this is from 2 years ago, it's China. They have a $216 billion budget. It's grown since then. They have 2,860 aircraft. They have 9,150 tanks, and they're going. This is information from 2 years ago, so this has changed since then. This is from Business Insider India, and they have 67 submarines. Russia, they have an $84.5 billion budget. They have over 15,000 tanks. They got close to 3,500 aircraft and 55 submarines. And then number one, top of the heap, the United States. It says here they have a budget of $601 billion. Well, I know that's different now. That's closer to $1 trillion at this point. They have 8,848 tanks, almost 14,000 aircraft, and 72 submarines. Now, these entities, these military entities, do not want the world to know, anyone. They do not want their citizens to know that they are completely helpless against these extraterrestrials. That's what this boils down to. They don't care that the importance to science. They're worried about might, military might, and the appearance or lack thereof of military might. Now, I was just talking the other day about a book that I've been checking out recently again, Above Top Secret. This book was written by Timothy Good, and it was published in 1988. So that's 35 years ago. And basically the same things that we're going to, we could talk about. It's like nothing has changed for the most part over the years. I just want to read a couple of passages here from page 436, 437, and also 439. And here he says here, no government is happy to admit that alien vehicles invading our airspace can come and go as they please, and that our defense against them is inadequate. That some UFOs have been responsible for the disappearance and even destruction of our aircraft is not something that could be admitted openly. Then later on he says, nobody likes to look silly. Fear of ridicule is a very compelling reason for politicians to debunk the subject, especially if they do not have access to all the facts. And I totally believe this. I mean, this is really, again, this is 35 years ago. It still stands today. This is one of the reasons, right? They don't want to admit this because they don't want to be viewed as weak. And then later on, it says here, public reaction to an admission by one of the superpowers that some UFOs are extraterrestrial would be predicated on how much we are told, and this must present our leaders with an awesome dilemma. Such an admission would lead to a deluge of questions, some of which simply cannot be answered without disclosing vital defense interests, alarming cases of missing aircraft, abductions, genetic experiments, and bizarre cases that will remain beyond our comprehension for centuries to come. So, that's another really good point. And then later on, he talks about something that was mentioned in the Majestic 12 documents. Of course, some people believe them and some people don't, but there are some things that were stated in there that most certainly ring true. He says, perhaps the most comprehensive summary of reasons for official secrecy on UFOs is contained in the Majestic 12 briefing paper, allegedly prepared by Admiral Hillenkotter for President-elect Dwight Eisenhower in 1952. Implications for the national security are of continuing importance in that the motives and ultimate intentions of these visitors remain completely unknown. It is for these reasons, as well as the obvious international and technological considerations and the ultimate need to avoid a public panic at all costs, that the Majestic 12 group remains of the unanimous opinion that imposition of the strictest security precautions should continue without interruption into the new administration. I believe that's the end of that. And I believe that's what's been going on here, folks. And I believe it still stands today, and that's why you're seeing this bite back from people within the Pentagon to continue this cover-up, to basically, and anybody wants to blow the whistle, well, we're gonna drag your name through the mud. You want to talk about the Department of Energy? Okay, let me send my idiot son out there to write some hit piece on you, right, or whatever. Well, maybe my colleagues within the Department of Energy or another departments of the Pentagon, maybe I'll get them to sick him on them, right? I don't know. I'm not saying that's true or not. I don't know what's true, but I just think it's funny, isn't it, that this Stephen Klippenstein is the father of Ken Klippenstein, and David Grusch just made a statement about the Department of Energy saying that that they're guilty of crimes against humanity. And then what? A month and a half later, next thing you know, they're saying things like this. They're pointing out, oh yeah, he had PTSD. Yeah, PTSD. He was alcoholic and he was thinking about suicide in 2014 and 2018. Now the only reason you would do something like that would be to hurt their credibility. That's why they're doing that, and to ridicule them, and to scare other potential whistleblowers away. And all of this is basically to maintain this secrecy because they are impotent. They can do nothing about it. They can do nothing about it. And because of this, right, because there's people like me out there who know that there's something here for a fact, right, like we were just talking about before. Because of this, that makes me feel totally unsafe. It makes me feel like we have no control over these things. And it's probably worse than we could possibly imagine. By them continuing to cover this up and pretend there's nothing to this, it makes it even worse as far as I'm concerned, because I know there's something here. And like I always like to point out, like if they don't know, then we're really in trouble, right? Which is impossible. That's impossible. But I mean, these kinds of things have been going on for decades. I mean, since this thing really started back in the late 40s, since we've really been paying attention to it. I mean, there's all kinds of chaos and that has unfolded over UFOs, and there's been people who have disappeared. Pilots disappeared, never to be seen again. Many cases, like this book Above Top Secret goes into, among other books that I have read, and I'm sure a lot of you out there have read them too. Things that there's just so much that you can't just contain all this information in an hour-long documentary. You could hit some highlights here and there, right? And you hear a lot of the same stories over and over again. But there's so much more. But yeah, this is a matter of impotence, right? There's nothing they can really do about this. And so feverishly behind the scenes in secret, they're trying to reverse engineer this stuff, and then maybe with the idea that someday we can come out and say, hey, look, we developed our own flying saucer, right? Look, it has no visible means of propulsion. It's using some electromagnetic forces to move around. Now we could compete now. That could be what they're thinking. But what if these things are 1 million years old, 1 million years beyond us, beyond our technology? What if that's the case? I mean, we're never going to see that. We're never going to see them reach that. We're never going to see some secret scientific study ascend to the rarefied heights of technology that's 1 million years more advanced than what we have right now. I just don't see how we're going to see that in our lifetime or any lifetime soon. So the bottom line is it doesn't matter that reason, the feeling of impotence should not be the reason why this cover-up continues. That's a stupid reason, because what if there's some moon-sized meteor all of a sudden starts heading our way? Okay, well, what are we going to do about it? We might not be able to stop it, and we're all going to be done. We're all going to disappear like the dinosaurs. So what? What are you going to do? I don't know. But anyway, this is stuff that's been going on for a long time here. Here's a story from history.com. The Air Force jet was scrambled to intercept a UFO and then disappeared. This is something that happened back in 1953. We're going to go through this article here. It's very interesting. The night an Air Force jet mysteriously disappeared over Lake Superior, November 23, 1953, was a stormy one. Near the United States-Canadian border, U.S. Air Defense Command noticed a blip on the radar where it shouldn't have been, an unidentified object in restricted airspace over Lake Superior, not far from Sioux Locks, the Great Lakes' most vital commercial gateway. An F-89C Scorpion jet from Truax Air Force Base in Madison, Wisconsin, took off from nearby Kincross Air Force Base to investigate, with 2 crew members on board. First Lieutenant Felix Moncia, who had clocked 811 flying hours, including 121 in a similar aircraft, took the pilot's seat, while Second Lieutenant Robert Wilson was observing radar. The men would not return from their intercept mission. What followed, according to Donald Kehoe, the former Marine Corps naval aviator and UFO researcher, who wrote about the incident in his 1955 book, The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, was one of the strangest cases on record. Once airborne, Lieutenant Wilson had difficulty tracking the unknown object, which kept changing course. So, with ground control directing the aviators over the radio, the Scorpion gave chase. The jet, traveling at 500 miles per hour, pursued the object for 30 minutes, gradually closing in. On the ground, the radar operator guided the jet down from 25,000 to 7,000 feet, watching one blip chase the other across the radar screen. Gradually, the jet caught up to the unknown object about 70 miles off Keenewa Point in Upper Michigan, at an altitude of 8,000 feet, approximately 160 miles northwest of Sioux Locks. At that point, the two radar blips converged into one, locked together, as Kehoe would put it later. And then, according to an official accident report, the radar return from the F-89 simply disappeared from the ground-controlled interception station's radar scope. And then the first radar return indicating the unidentified object veered off and vanished too. The U.S. Air Force, U.S. Coast Guard, and Canadian Air Force conducted an extensive search and rescue effort. No records or sign of the pilots was ever found. And then what happens next? The Air Force flip-flops in its explanation, just like they always do when it comes to these kind of things. The Air Force's official news release about the disappearance, delivered to the Associated Press, stated that the vanished jet was followed by radar until it merged with an object 70 miles off Keenewa Point in Upper Michigan. The statement appeared in a story in the Chicago Tribune with the headline, "Jet 2 aboard vanishes over Lake Superior." The Air Force soon retracted the statement and changed the story. According to the new statement, the ground control radar operator had misread the scope. Oh, they love to blame it on someone else. This reminds me of Roswell. Yeah, the top intelligence agent down there in Roswell Army Air Base, Jesse Marcel, he mistook a weather balloon for flying saucer. Big mistake. He's a dummy, I guess, you know? Anyway, continuing here. It says, in fact, the F-89 had successfully completed the mission, intercepting and identifying the UFO as a Dakota, a Royal Canadian Air Force C-47 aircraft, flying some 30 miles off course. Lieutenant Moncia, probably stricken with vertigo, crashed into the lake during the return to base. Canadian officials refuted the account. No flights had taken place in the area that night, so they're trying to say, yeah, Lieutenant Moncia, he got vertigo, crashed into the lake, made a mistake, was sick. No more questions. Anyway, according to Kehoe, who would write about the Kinross incident again in his 1973 book, Aliens from Space, two separate Air Force representatives provided Lieutenant Moncia's widow with contradictory explanations of the incident. In one version of the events, the pilot had crashed into the lake while flying too low. In the other, the jet exploded at a high altitude. That he couldn't even get their story straight. Yeah, we're sorry, ma'am, about your husband. He was flying too low over the lake, and that was it. And then somebody else, no, you know what? The jet exploded over high altitude. Yeah. See ya. Sorry. Continuing. The investigators take. The case file from Project Blue Book, the Air Force's own US UFO investigatory team, reiterated the Air Force assertion that the jet successfully accomplished its mission and that the crash was an accident probably caused by an attack of vertigo. It attributed the abnormal radar behavior to unusual atmospheric conditions and deemed the inability to recover wreckage as understandable given the deep water. Meanwhile, investigators from the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, or NICAP, discovered that any mention of the mission had been expunged from official records. Why would they expunge it? Impotence. Impotence. And the Aerospace Technical Intelligence Center's official line in the case was, there is no record in the Air Force files of sighting at Kinross Air Force Base on 23 November 1953. There is no case in the files which even closely parallels these circumstances. Impotence. Impotence. In the absence of a thorough and satisfying official explanation, civilian saucer groups, as Project Blue Book would call them, developed their own theories. According to one, the jet had crashed into UFO's protective beam like a concrete wall. Others speculated that the jet may have been scooped out of the air and taken aboard the spacecraft. Perhaps so the captured men could teach their alien captors the English language. Well, that sounds a little crazy, don't it? In 1968, there were local newspaper reports of military jet fragments discovered near the shore of Lake Superior, but the find was never verified. In 2006, Adam Jimenez, claiming to be a representative of the Great Lakes Dive Company, corresponded with UFO bloggers and members of the UFO community. He claimed that not only had an airplane wreck been discovered in the area, but a metallic object resembling a chunk of a flying saucer as well. UFO researchers soon exposed inaccuracies in Jimenez's story and concluded that the Great Lakes Dive Company did not exist. eventually Adam Jimenez too vanished without a trace. Okay. Now, see, this is what happens all time and time again. This is just one story in many stories like this, where military aircraft go out, chase after a UFO, never come back, disappear. There's many stories. I've talked about it before on this. This is just I don't believe I talked about this particular case, but I know I talked about other cases. But see, this is the issue. This is what I think, one of the big reasons why the militaries, like the United States government, along with all its allies, they understand in their minds. They think, well, if we can't do anything about it, we're going to seem impotent. We'll seem weak. We can't let the public know we're impotent or weak, which they really shouldn't think this way. It's just part of this life we're part of, and this world we're in. I mean, again, whatever they're going to do, these beings, right? If they want to abduct somebody, they're going to do it. They have the power. There's nothing anybody could do to stop it, and so what? It's not the military's fault that they can't do anything about it. It's not their fault that they're impotent when it comes to this. It's just not their fault. It's just that these things are way more advanced than anything that we could possibly imagine. So that's why there's this effort, and this effort is still going strong. It's hasn't let up. And we're going to continue to see it. I still believe, I really hope that what's gone down here in the past week and a half here with this nonsense trying to attack Grusch doesn't interfere with more whistleblowers stepping forward. I hope that they continue to want to do this. Will continue to. I hope it should strengthen their resolve. Right? Who cares? What's more important, getting the truth out, or worried about they're going to call me a drunk because unreliable because I had PTSD in the past. I think for the most part, most people look at this, unless you're a scumbag, like say you're someone like Stephen Greenstreet, who works for the New York Times, right? Or excuse me, not New York Times, New York Post. Say you're someone like that guy. That guy's he's garbage, right? He's just a troll. I mean, who knows what he really believes, right? You can't tell. I mean, guy's a goofball. I mean, yeah, he'll go on Twitter and say things. Oh, yeah, this guy can't be trusted. He'll probably, I don't know if he said that or not, but that's, he'll imply it, right? And say that all this stuff is that all this talk about that there's some sort of a deliberate effort to smear Grusch. That's just not true. Like the bunkers will do stuff like that, right? They will do stuff like that. But most people they have brains in their heads. I mean, they could see, they see the truth right in front of them. So, again, I don't know why the militaries would feel like they're impotent against. How that doesn't make any sense to me, because we're not technologically advanced enough to compete with whatever's coming here, that doesn't mean you're impotent. We're good for what we are. You shouldn't have to worry. You shouldn't worry. That shouldn't be a factor here. Who cares? I mean, it doesn't matter. That means nothing, right? That's not important. It's just not important. I don't care. And whatever sort of scientist in the past, like when I was reading before these statements, people in the past, well, we can't let that truth come out. I mean, people would panic. There'll be a little handful maybe that's going to panic. I don't think there's really going to be much panic at all. I think the human race is ready for this. We're ready. So forget about it. Put your concerns away about the feelings of impotence, because you shouldn't have them. I mean, still, the United States, best military in the world. Russia and China, second and third best. Too bad for you. But hey, it doesn't matter. Who cares, right? That should not be playing a factor into this equation, but for some reason it seems like it is. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're not impotent. You're not. We're trying to calm you down here. It's by admitting the truth that you're not. It's not a sign of weakness. How are you supposed? How's the military supposed to know that there's other beings out there that exist? Nobody really thought about these things back in the 40s. Okay, now we're accepting it now. It's like, yeah, it's real, because it is real. A lot of us know it, and we're sick of this nonsense. This little cover-up game you're playing. We're done. We're done with it. We're done. Scientific community needs to get involved in this. That's what needs to happen. It's time. Anyway, now yesterday, for the episode, I want to talk about a poll that I started yesterday. I'm going to update it here, see where we are. Yeah, so far I have 67 votes on it. It was for the episode, It's Great Being Right About UFOs / Peru Officials Push Wild Theory on Alien Attacks. Yes, it is. I mean, just before I even get into this, it is great being right about UFOs. It's great. It's like being in a dominant position, knowing. It's great. Anyway, I asked this question. Of the skeptics listed, whose reaction do you look forward to seeing most once the irrefutable evidence of the alien presence is revealed? Now, I provided 7 names here of people, and we're going to go through them one by one. Stephen Greenstreet, who I was talking about before, nobody even cares. Nobody even voted for him. There's 67 votes so far, 29 days left. Nobody cares what his reaction is going to be because everybody realizes the guy's a useless troll. Right? That's all he is. So nobody voted. Nobody cares what his reaction is. Nobody cares about Stephen Greenstreet. Okay, so he got 0. 0, Stephen. 0. Mike Turner. He's the GOP head of the House Intelligence Committee who receives a lot of campaign contributions from the military-industrial complex, much more than most other politicians. I've talked about him recently. I've exposed him too. He got 1 vote or 1.5%. Nobody cares about Mike Turner either, except that they want him removed from the House Intelligence as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. That's all anybody really cares about. Bill Nye, the science guy. Sorry, Bill. Guess what? Only one person wants to see your reaction. They don't care about you. 1.5%. Be gone. Okay, who's next in line? John Greenwald. 4.5%. 3 people want to see John Greenwald's reaction, who a lot of people suspect is a skeptic because he's basically hanging out with the other stooges, Mick West and Greenstreet. So yeah, 3 people or 4.5% want to see Greenwald's reaction once the truth is irrefutable evidence is finally revealed. Okay, next up, Ken Klippenstein. Oh boy, a week and a half ago nobody would have known who he was. But now 5 people or 7.5% want to see his reaction. They can't wait. Once that irrefutable evidence finally drops, they want to see Ken Klippenstein's reaction. And then, okay, next in line, Mick West, 13. Only 13, Mick. 19.4%. That's not too good. I guess you're not that important after all in this whole scheme of things. Everyone sees right through you, right? Sorry. And then finally, but Neil deGrasse Tyson is the champion here. He has 44 votes so far, or 65.7%. A lot of people, oh, boy, it's going to be nice, isn't it? Once that does drop, to see his face, to see his puss on TV talking, what's he going to say? I'm sure it will be very interesting. I actually like Neil deGrasse Tyson, except when he talks about UFOs. I enjoy listening to him. I think he's a funny guy. But when he talks about UFOs, I get upset because I just think, how could this intelligent man be so dumb when it comes to this subject? So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with the majority on that. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'd be very interested to see his reaction to all of this once the proof is finally dropped. Because it's coming. One way or another, it's going to happen. Whether it's through the whistleblowers or something else happens, but it's coming, folks. It's coming. Don't you worry. It's coming. It's coming down the pike. One way or another. Right? One way or another. Because like I said before, like I said yesterday, it's real. It's happening. All these people who naysayers, wrong. Can't wait. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Until next time.